Go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for joining us today for our latest installment of Conversations with We. Our topic today is Accelerate Action, Advancing Women Leaders in Health and Wellness. My name is Christine Urea. I am your honored moderator today to be talking to this esteemed panel. I'm super excited for our discussion we're getting ready to have. What I would ask first is those of you who just joined, if you could go to the top of your screen and select View, and then select speaker. That will give you the best view of our discussion today, because then whoever is speaking will give you the largest viewpoint, so you'll be able to see them. If you don't mind selecting that, and we'll go ahead and get started here in just a minute. Okay, so today you're going to hear from a panel of industry leaders as they share their experiences on leadership, career growth, and how we can open doors for the next generation of women leaders within the health and wellness space. Our panel will explore the evolution of women in the corporate America and challenges and opportunities of entrepreneurship and the power of mentorship and allies. Together, we'll discuss how women are shaping the future of leadership within our industry and the steps that we all can take to continue progress moving forward. So let's dive in. So I'd love for our panelists to introduce themselves. And if you don't mind, ladies, please provide some type of foundational or inspirational moment for what inspired you to begin taking action to support women within our industry. So Michelle, I'll start with you.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here today. I am Michelle Mohammed. I'm the CEO of Vanderpool Strategy. That's my marketing and sales consulting firm. And I'm focused on helping emerging brands bring their footprint to the market. But I got my start in this industry after business school. I worked at classic brand management training at the former J&J consumer companies. And after a while in there, I decided that the traditional brand management route was not going to be for me. I was already a mom and having a family, and I thought that a smaller environment was going to be better for me and my family. And I have to tell you, I've been lucky enough to design a career that worked for me and my family in those smaller companies while still ascending to greater roles and building a network and just really having the kind of opportunities I wanted to have. So I'm so happy to be here, and I hope I can be helpful to you.
Oh, thank you. Lisa, why don't you go next?
Okay, I'm going to echo Michelle and say I feel very lucky too. I'd love to tell you that every step along the career journey was planned out and strategic. It was not, but here I am. I too started in traditional consumer packaged goods with Procter & Gamble and Nestle and J&J. I became an entrepreneur and a founder and helped effect the transaction of two companies, netgrocer.com, that was a retailer, and then the Illuminations Group, which was a consulting firm owned now by the Market Performance Group and goes under the name of FlexForce. Illuminations was designed to help smart, talented women work part-time flexibly. I saw the need in our field for this kind of talent and the lack of opportunities for flexible work at the time. I started the company when my daughter was just born, and here we are 20-something years later, and there's still a need for flexible work. It's not just women anymore, but it is still very much focused on women. So I mentioned my daughter. I also have two sons, and today I run a podcast called Dauntless Leadership, and I'll throw the link in the chat. I'd love you all to listen. That is helping emerging women leaders improve their skills through lessons from true successes along the way. And finally, to answer Christine's question, what got me started in thinking about women and women managers and leaders truly was I was appointed to run the Johnson's Baby franchise. And guess what? There were no new moms on the Johnson's Baby franchise. So I raised my hand and I said, anybody coming back from maternity leave, and this was a new thing then, there were not a lot of women in marketing, please automatically rotate them to Johnson's Baby, because who better to have than the consumer who's right in the thick of it. And that was kind of the beginning of thinking about things a little differently, and proud to say I'm hopefully still doing it and hopefully can be of help to you all.
Love it. Lauren, what about you?
Yes, my name is Lauren Snow. I just celebrated 10 years last month at Dollar General, where I'm a senior director in global inventory management. I spent most of my time at Dollar General in merchandising and buying, including 2 years in the healthcare area. And I've been surrounded by so many phenomenal women and leaders since my very first day at work. And I do firmly believe I wouldn't be here where I am today without leaders investing in me. And so I think something you'll hear from me today, I hope you hear from me, is that there are simple and small things that we can all do that really make a huge difference and support the growth of women leaders. And Christine, to answer your question, I think one of the first things that inspired action for me was watching a well-known TED Talk given by Sheryl Sandberg many years ago. She mentions the need for maternity parking spots at Google when she was pregnant. And I was so moved by the simplicity of that gesture and how she was able to make it happen that I sent a note to my HR and was able to get maternity parking spots on every level of our parking garage many years before I myself would need them. So thank you all for having me today. I feel really fortunate to be here and look forward to the discussion.
I love it. And that answer actually leads us perfectly into this first question, Lauren. So clearly you guys have a tremendous amount of experience within CPG health and wellness, both as individual contributors early in your career and then later on as team leaders. You just mentioned a great example of this, Lauren. I'd love to hear if you have any other thoughts on what other successful strategies or initiatives have you witnessed during your career that have helped to promote leaders within our field?
Yeah, so again, just on that concept of simple things, I've had a lot of opportunities and invitations that were extended to me to join a meeting or a special project, maybe like a company store trip, where I was able to be around senior leadership and really get exposure to those leaders that I wouldn't normally meet or interact with or just kind of watch. And so it was not only like organic networking opportunities for me, but something that really improved my executive presence and my comfort level asking questions and interacting with senior leadership. Ultimately it's on the person you're trying to help and lead and give connections to be impressive, as I call it, and take advantage of the opportunity. But it's really like those types of invitations and inviting someone to join meetings or discussions. It might seem like a low lift, no big deal to you, but it's super valuable to someone earlier in their career, someone that has a lot of potential. And so when I think back to the first, 5 years of my career, the people that I see faces, I see names when I think about this, the people that did this for me and really gave me that exposure, it's the reason I'm where I am today for sure. So I think that's just like an example of kind of, it might seem simple, but it really does make a big difference when you include people in meetings and discussions they maybe otherwise wouldn't be invited to join. So
absolutely. But those are simple steps that are easy to replicate, right? Those
Yeah.
are things that are easy to bring into your everyday practice. You noticed it. It was impactful on you, and you took action to start to do those things yourself, which is great. Lisa, what about you? What are your thoughts in terms of some of those strategies or initiatives that you've seen have been successful?
Well, one of the things I was going to mention, Lauren has mentioned, which is try to envision ways to pull up other women with you, and particularly young women who may not have had the exposure that you can now have. I also said invest in training and development. This is a place where I feel like, especially in hard times, companies cut, and the stronger we are in our skills and more confident, then the better we'll be at showing our impressiveness. I put selectively choose at least one extracurricular activity, not a million, but something that will get you exposure beyond your current job within your organization, just to meet another group of people that you might not otherwise have interacted with. Advocacy from women leaders who have preceded you. So it's on us, it's incumbent on us to really continue to advocate, and openness to non-traditional work arrangements and career paths to allow women, all people actually, the opportunity to thrive, whether they're caring for young kids, caring for aging parents, pursuing a PhD, lots of reasons why people might need a little bit of a step back or a flexibility in their career.
Absolutely. Michelle, what do you think are some of the biggest barriers that women have faced in our industry?
Well, there are a ton of them. But the ones I like to think about are the ones that women can control on their own, because we have a lot of self-imposed barriers that we have. And let me give you a couple examples. One example is there's a stat that says from the Wall Street Journal that says 50% of men get advice that they should go into P&L roles, younger when they're in the career, when only 15% of women get that same advice. And the P&L role is so important because that's your way you're going to get up the management track, right? In order to be a leader, you have to understand the P&L, and the P&L tells you what the company values, right? What are they spending their money on, as opposed to what they're not. So I think that's a barrier. One is that, women need to know that. I'd say the other thing is that women tend to be rule followers as opposed to men think of things as guidelines when you think of requirements, and women think of them as rules, right? So if you're looking at a job that you want to post for, a woman would say, well, there's 10 requirements. I need to have 8 of them. Oh my God, am I going to make it? And a man would say, if I have 2 of them, I'm definitely qualified, right? So it's really because we kind of self-impose those rules on it. And that also leads to something which I think we could also own is more of risk taking, because risk takers are the ones who generally get rewarded from it. And when you take a risk, if you fail, you just learn. There's only 2 things, you win or you learn, right? And I think risk taking is something that women need to do more so that they can, show their value to the organization more than what would typically make sense. So those are the things I think, those are barriers, self-imposed barriers that, women could do to help them advance in the organization.
Perfect. To tie to the things that both you and Lisa just mentioned, Lisa, you mentioned that you should seek training, right? You should seek opportunities to learn new things that would potentially help to advance your career. Michelle, you just mentioned P&L acumen and financial acumen as one of those components. It sounds like that's an area where potentially, if you have an opportunity to seek out some training, that's an area the 2 of you would say you'd recommend, right? Would be an opportunity to potentially get you prepared to have those conversations or prepared for the next level. Would you agree?
Absolutely. But just to tie on to something that Lisa was saying, I have an example of a young woman that I was mentoring that was going to leave an organization because she thought that her manager, who in all truth, she wasn't a good manager. She was a good performer, but she wasn't a good manager. And I said to her, seek out something else in your organization that you can do. Extracurricular. She ended up joining, they had a milestone anniversary. She joined that committee. On that committee was what? All the senior vice presidents and the CEO. The CEO went to her same alumni university. And then now she knew all of them. And so she was able to create her own opportunities because she showed how successful she was, how smart she was, how much passion she had for the organization. And that led to her promotion that her manager wasn't going to give her because she wasn't skilled to do it. So, all these things tie together.
Yeah. And just to build back on the P&L comment, I didn't use it as an example in my answer, but attending a P&L meeting when I was earlier in my career and maybe wouldn't otherwise have been in there helped me a lot too, because it gave me the opportunity to listen in and look at what was being reviewed, but it wasn't as intimidating because I wasn't expected to be presenting it, right? Like I was watching, I was asking questions afterwards to those that were mentoring me. So I think all of these themes kind of come and tie together. So
yeah, and you were given the opportunity to attend meetings sometimes where you could observe, right? That's what you mentioned as well. So just having the opportunity, giving the opportunity for people to be exposed to some of those areas that potentially they may not manage today, but could be impactful for them in the future to learn about. Sounds like that's an opportunity for us to take action on. Lisa, are there any other industries that are doing it better than we are here in health and wellness? And if so, can we learn anything from them?
Well, that's a great question. And one of the things that I wanted to say is I do see lots of industries, and our industry actually is doing pretty well. There are a lot of women moving up through the ranks. We have women CEOs. I'm here today because Lisa Paley, president of Haleon North America, asked me. So, really, we're doing okay. Not to say that we can't always do better, right? The only 10% of top Fortune 500 companies are led by women, and that's certainly not gender parity. But a couple other sectors, should people be thinking about a move someday, not now. Tech certainly has really recognized and given women an opportunity to thrive. If you think about companies today like Waymo or Canva, women founded, women led. Financial services surprisingly made a big effort in the last decade to promote women and to give women lots of opportunities. Up until 10 years ago, it was very much a man's world. And then, of course, communications and media companies have been consistent in giving women opportunities. Some places like Disney have always had women in leadership roles. The programs I think we should look for are more important than the sector or the category. So companies that invest in training and development, that have leadership programs, that offer mentorship and sponsorship and reward it. Flexible work policies, these are all key factors in advancing women, and they should drive your interest in a company, whether it's tech or financial services or health and wellness.
Lauren, what do you think, besides some of the things that Lisa just mentioned, what are some of the other ways that companies can create that inclusive environment that you mentioned, earlier on in the conversation, and some of those areas that Lisa mentioned that she sees in other industries? What are some of the things that you think that we could do or advocate for within the companies we work for to create that inclusive environment?
Yeah, I think the word I've heard several times already today, and I firmly believe in it, is flexibility. And so really creating an environment with flexibility and also empathy and understanding that the people that are on your teams or that your business partners you work with are navigating different stages of life. I think Lisa also referenced, whether it's you have aging parents you're caring for, or you're a parent of small children or school-age children that have, sports commitments that you want to be there for, that type of thing. Just recognizing that everyone is at a different stage of life, and it may or may not be a stage that you've been in, or it's been a while. And so there's simple acts of flexibility. I think a really simplistic example that I like to give is if there's some type of project or recap that needs to be sent out by the following morning. Understanding that for some people on your team, that might mean I want to stay online until 6:30 or 7, knock it out, log off, kind of be done for the evening. But for others, myself included, I need to get out the door at 5:30 so I can spend a couple hours with my children before they go to bed, and I'll get back on after bedtime and finish that up. And that's what works best for me. And not feeling like you have to justify that or explain that or defend that. It's, I feel so supported and relieved that, just that simple little thing, I'm going to get the work done by the deadline, but just your leader's path to completing something versus the way you need to do it might look different. So just, being flexible, being understanding.
Perfect. Do you think we've done a better job of delivering on that flexibility today? Are we getting better at it?
Yeah, I really do. I think it, especially for companies where maybe they were full in office with really limited remote work options. I think I've really seen a transformation there just with this. We can be more flexible. We can work in different environments. We can log back on later and do things. So I definitely see tremendous progress just since 5 years ago. So.
Lisa, the base of your business was around flexibility, right? It's about helping people to be able to still work and be flexible to their personal needs at home. How would you suggest that people advocate for that type of flexibility that Lauren just mentioned within their companies and show the value? Part of your company value proposition was to demonstrate that to companies and the value of those associates coming in and being able to support during their own flexible needs as their companies. Would you offer advice to folks in terms of how to create those conversations and deliver that value back of offering that flexibility to their associates?
Once upon a time, I would have thought that by 2025, we would not even have had to have this conversation. That would just kind of be in the normal lexicon and in the way we did business, that flexibility was the norm. And showing up from 8 to 8 was except maybe on Wall Street, was the abnormal. But we're not there yet. The one thing I would say is there is no need to apologize. This is something often uniquely feminine, that we find that we have to apologize if we want to log off and then log back on. Do the work, deliver the results, show that you can do it, and don't focus on the how, focus on the what. I would put Lumination's Flex Force's part-time talent up against a lot of full-time talent. And in fact, I think the women who got the opportunity to work flexibly really, were all in. Whereas if you were working 5 days a week, you might not be all in all 5 days a week. And you have to do some of the non-value added stuff that you don't have to do when you're 2.5 days a week. So don't apologize. Deliver what you promise. In fact, over deliver. But we do that anyway. And check in often. Communication is really critical. Make sure you understand expectations of a manager or a client better than somebody who's working 5 days full time. And then you can deliver against their expectations or over deliver.
I love it. I love that it's not the how, but the what, right? It's the performance that matters the most, and having the flexibility for folks to be able to identify what works for them in terms of the how, as long as the what is there, right? And having that as a part of your leadership style, you're advocating for that potentially. Am I hearing you right?
You are. And just to add one thing, which is somewhat controversial, when people ask me to take a look at their LinkedIn or their resume, very often they'll put on their part-time or whatever, or interim, whatever. And I say, well, why is that on there? Did you do the job? Did you learn the things that you said in the bullet points underneath the job? And can you do this for someone else? Why is it relevant if you did it 60 hours a week or 6 hours a week if you did it? So for all of us who may have taken a break, including running a PTO or a PTA, put what we delivered and not when or how on your resume.
Love it. Okay. I want to pivot a little bit. Let's talk about mentorship. So what role do you think mentorship and allyship plays as a part of advancing women within our industry? And what have you seen that has worked well for yourself, as well as maybe potentially ways that you've helped others as a part of being a mentor? Lisa.
Okay, well, back to me. I'm literally going into the city tomorrow to a retirement party for a boss of mine who was an ally and a sponsor. And I think of a sponsor as different from a mentor, because the sponsor can, again, pull you up in the organization, often are levels above you, and speak on your behalf. His name is Owen Rankin, for anybody who might remember him. And he was a guy who was leading a North American business who took a chance on me, and really respected and allowed that flexibility, and that, I would say, diversity of thought. I wasn't always a rule follower. So really makes a huge difference in a career. And somebody that, as he went to take over health equity at Johnson & Johnson, I did work for them. I've worked with him on and off over 30 years, so made a big difference. Mentorship to me is finding somebody that you can guide and being there to answer questions and creating a safe space. And what I would encourage everybody to do is find somebody they admire and ask them to mentor you, but knowing how much is on everybody's plate, define it. It's not 80 hours a week, it's not 8 hours a week, it's 18 minutes a week, or it's once every other week, and what can you get from them? And by the way, don't forget that you always have something to offer them as well. Whether you're younger, whether you're from a different industry, it's almost, in fact, I can't think of any time when it wasn't a two-way street.
Love it. Michelle, what about you? I know mentorship is a really important thing for you. You have a lot of passion behind it. I know even through our work with you've been very involved as a part of that and an advocate for it. What do you think?
Well, so mentorship is crucial. And basically, you're trying to either find there's an information gap, there's a skill gap, there's a thinking gap, right? And it could be in a functional area, it could be in a position, but this is why mentors are so crucial. And as Lisa said, you need to approach it with a specific task or ask in mind. So it's not a general, how can I learn from you? It's like, I have this that I want to learn, and I'm hoping that you can help, me get through it. So one example I have is someone I was mentoring recently just wanted to get a raise and was pissed that she had done so well so long and was getting the same raise. And in this company where she was at, in this division, they had raises. They gave this everybody the same amount every year, which I can't believe is still happening. But they have a pot of money and they don't want to be creative. So first of all, that you should know is that raises, there's a pot of money, it's a percentage, yes. But that manager or leader has the opportunity to give raises at both ends. So say it's a 4% raise for the division, you can give one person an 8%, another person zero, right? Because somebody's a superstar and somebody's like on their way out. It doesn't have to be even Steven. So it's part of the conversation. Well, what are you doing to show that you're achieving more? And talking to their boss and understanding what's on their plate, what's important, and asking them the simple question like, I want to show my worth, and how do I do it? What needs to be true in order for me to get what I want, which is a raise, maybe, right? Or what needs to be true for me to get a promotion? Understand what they're thinking. And especially because if you can deliver on those specific things, then they kind of feel that they have to do what they said they were going to do because they've already committed to it. And you bring them in along the way. So, in general, your general question, that was an example, but the general question is about mentoring. It's really about filling those gaps and talking to people who've probably been in your shoes or been in close to your shoes, or also can see it from the 10,000-foot level when you're looking at it from the 5,000-foot level. So there's tons of examples that we can all give, and I get mentored all the time still. I think that's one of the reasons why I love We so much, is because we can always call each other and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. How might I approach it? And get a different perspective. And also get a perspective from somebody who's in a different functional area or at a different stage in their career development. So it's critically important to sort of open the aperture again and making sure that we're thinking about this more broadly than being in that specific area.
It sounds like, and I've heard this, I think, before as well, that we're both a mentor and a mentee, right? There's things coming in the funnel and things going out of the funnel, and being able to take from others around you, identify the right people, to provide that guidance to you, that sounding board, like you mentioned that you were to that woman, but then also being able to impart that knowledge, take it in, impart it, and give it to somebody else potentially, is where we can help to drive change and help to lead, right? But taking from all the great experience around us and making sure that we're leveraging those learnings as well. Speaking of that, one of the things we talked a lot about in terms of, is the fact that we have this great network that we've been fortunate enough, to create. I'd love to hear from all three of you. What are some of the tips that you would give to emerging leaders in terms of how to build your network and leverage that for your own personal growth and be able to then, convert that into being able to lead change? So networks are critically important, different than mentorship, different than creating an inclusive environment. Let's talk about what you think it takes to build that network and why it's so critically important. So Lauren, I'll go to you first.
Yeah. And I mean, I think this does build really naturally off of mentorship. I think there are, I talked about it earlier, just being able to meet other people within your organization, maybe outside of your organization, through being included in different meetings or projects that you wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to be in. So that's one great way. I also think if there are other functions within your organization that you don't work in, but there's a natural synergy. For me, I've had several networking opportunities for like store operations. And so it really naturally works well with merchandising while still being separate. And usually all it takes is meeting one or two people, and then they kind of help open doors for you to collaborate and talk with others. But what I really like is when you start to network with people and start to just set up quick little touch bases to get to know each other, you can really start to teach each other about your roles in a very natural, organic way that doesn't feel like this forced, like arranged meeting. You know what I mean? And so I've really benefited from networking with people within my organization that maybe work in different functions and just kind of making each other better through talking about our roles and processes and really just collaborating. So.
Perfect. Lisa, what about you?
Okay, well, I'm a huge fan of networking. And Michelle, if I can talk a little bit about us. Michelle and I have been closely networked for many, many years. She worked on Johnson's Baby too. She worked with me at Luminations. I worked for her as a client at DSE. So networks really matter, not just in friendships, and I would consider you my friend, but also in, your life's journey and careers, in being able to advocate for each other and maybe hire each other and help each other find a job. And I know Christine at the end of this session is going to say, we'll stick around if you guys want to network a bit. Don't get off the Teams call. Spend 5 more minutes and meet 2 more people, because you just never know. And I like to say, don't take a job or leave a job because of one person, because that one person might be gone tomorrow. But do try to get to know one more new person every single week.
I love it. That's great. Anything else you guys want to add about networks before we go on to the last question?
Yeah, I would just say that the reason why We is together, right? The birth of We was really about women in this industry at conferences and not having those same kind of networks that men had, seeing each other, but not really knowing each other and getting together. And that was a phenomenal idea, Andrea Fallon, if you're listening, who's one of the founders of We. So that has really helped me tremendously in terms of networking. The other thing is that I'm sure there's others that are like me. I'm an introvert. So I'm not a natural person to go out and talk to people and, want to just get involved. But going to industry conferences has been really helpful with me. The CHPA conference has a women's leadership group that is phenomenal in this industry. So if you're a part of that, you should know about that. And there's tons of others. Like We is not meant to be exclusive. We is meant to spread the word about all these different groups of women that can get together and network together. So, and you don't have to belong to just one, We love for you to be a part of many. So that's what I'd say.
Absolutely. All right. Lauren, question for you. So where do we get started? There's a lot of folks on the phone for some great advice today, wondering where they get started as it relates to starting to advocate for change within their companies. What do you think are some good first steps? How do we get started with that?
Yeah, so I think it's easy to get overwhelmed trying to like make a big change or tackle a large problem or try to advocate for change in like a broad way. So I like to say you can commit to doing one small act a day, or maybe it's one small act a week, just something, one person, one leader, they really make a big difference. I think sometimes it's easy to forget. For me, I said it earlier, I see people when I think about people that one small thing really did advocate for change. And so, yeah, that's one thing. And then I also think just creating and encouraging a safe space, which really just builds trust. And it can also in collaboration. So having safe spaces for people on your team, people you work with, to really feel like they can be open and honest and provide feedback. So.
Love the idea of a safe space. That's a fantastic concept. Michelle, what do you think? What are some of those ideas for first steps?
Yeah, I would say if they're like, in the vein of safe spaces in organizations, lots of times there are ERGs, employee resource groups, that come together naturally or exist in your organization. There's women's leadership groups. There, for people of color, they have different ones, or different culture, or just different passions. I think, I heard this on Lisa's leadership podcast, Dauntless Leadership Podcast, about an ERG. I think it was at Halion, and it was for people who are in a life phase where they're caring for someone. It's basically a caregiver ERG. Those kinds of safe spaces, or sort of common things that you're experiencing in your life, are really good places to start networking, because it's something that you're passionate about, that they're passionate about. But if it's within your company, you're just getting to know people based on the similar passion. So that's an easy kind of way, I think, to network within your company. But there are just so many ways. And like I said, I'm an introvert, so for me, this is not as easy as it might seem. But if you're thinking about it as building relationships, and if Lisa made it simple, right, one a week. If I think about it that way, it feels a little bit easier for me to digest, and really take ownership of. So yeah, those are some other ideas. Oh,
Okay,
there's one thing I want to say before I'm sorry, you move on, Christine, was about um, Lisa mentioned earlier sponsorship, and we didn't talk about it here, but the best sponsorship TED Talk I ever heard was Carla Harris. It's old now, but if you don't know what sponsorship is, or don't know how to go about it, it is a really great TED Talk. She's from Morgan Stanley, so I advise people to listen to that.
Give us the cliff notes. Tell us a little bit about. Go ahead.
Well, basically, she was saying that when she came into Morgan Stanley, her career, being really smart, and then she thought everything was a meritocracy. Quite the fact, it's quite opposite. You need a sponsor in your organization, someone who is there to speak for you in rooms where you're not. So rooms about raises, rooms about promotions, rooms about just what's going to happen with the future of the company, how assignments are being handed out. You're not in that room, so who in that room advocates for you? And sponsorship is about putting their credibility on the line for you. So that person has to know you, has to have some interactions with you, so that they can credibly say and want to put their credibility on the line that you are the person that should be, get the raise or get the promotion. So sponsors are very different from mentors, and women are usually over mentored and under sponsored. So if you don't have one, go get one.
Love it. Lisa or Lauren, anything you'd like to add to that over and above what we've already shared on sponsorship?
First of all, Michelle, are you really an introvert?
Yes.
Really? I didn't know that. That must mean I'm like overly extrovert and I drag stuff out of you. But look for sponsors and mentors that offer complementary skills, that don't do the same thing that you do, that offer things that you admire and want to do better. Because I put in the chat the Dauntless Leadership podcast with Lisa Paley, and she does mention that ERG, Michelle, and also that they're doing things like secondment, which is if somebody goes on a maternity leave, creating a stretch assignment that somebody else can rotate into while they're gone, really looking for that opportunity to do something different. And yes, a little daunting, a little scary. I also threw your TED Talk link in there too for Carla Harris, for people who want to watch it. And I will just say, one of the things that I found in my career, when I have asked women I admire to be a part of my learning, they almost always say yes. Just listen to the podcast. I just call people I admire and say, will you be on it? And they say yes. So, say yes when somebody asks you, but remember, every yes is a no to something else. So don't say yes a million times. And you be the mentor and you be the sponsor for someone, and somebody will do it for you too.
I love it. All right, so before we close it out and move on to our networking opportunity that Lisa has mandated for everybody, I'm going to offer the opportunity for everybody to ask questions. And I will say, I'm hoping this works. If you can potentially drop a question into the chat. I was hearing earlier that it might not be working, so I'm going to give it a few minutes. If anybody has any questions, you could drop a question into the chat. And maybe, Allison, if you could do me a favor and just try to type into the chat and let me know if it types in for you. So I'm thinking I might not have the ability, unfortunately.
You could use the Q&A function if the chat's not working. Oh, yep, it worked though.
Yeah, I see.
It did?
Mhm.
Oh, perfect.
Want me to read it to you?
Yes, because it's coming in a little weird on my side.
Okay. Any recommendations specifically for permanently remote workers on how to do networking and mentorship, both in their own organizations and also in the industry, because they might otherwise be disadvantaged?
Well, perfect. Okay. You want to answer that question, Lisa?
Oh, yeah. Stay on the line for the next 15 minutes. We're here. Take advantage of opportunities. When someone sends you a webinar, sign up. Even if you can't go, it'll come to you as a recording. Go to one physical event. This is a great month, right? This is Women's History Month and International Women's Day. There are events everywhere. Find one and just go. And like gird your loins if you are an introvert like Michelle, and say, I'm going to go introduce myself to 4 or 5 people.
Perfect. Michelle, there's a question here for you. It said, you touched on both formal and informal mentorship. How do you think about balancing each of those two things or managing each of those two things, the differences between informal and formal?
Yeah, so I would say informal is, you got a question, you want to get a specific answer to something. It's not necessarily going to be an ongoing relationship that somebody has to commit to for a long time. So I would say that's more of the informal mentoring, but you're still going to get your question answered in a way in which makes sense. Formal mentoring, I think, is you have something that there's a relationship that's developing over time, and it's going to take time to reach that goal. So you need some kind of the ongoing, you need to check in and say, well, this is where I am, on the timeline of the achievement, this is where I am. And so you need that time to go through the steps. So, in my mentoring, I'll say, well, this week you were going to talk to your manager, and how did that conversation go, and how do you want to respond to next time? So it's more of a formal, and it's also a formal ask. You're asking people to commit to a certain amount of time with you. So I would say if it's a longer term situation that you're dealing with, you probably need a formal mentor so you can go through it together. And if you just need a quick answer to some things that may help you look at some things different or answer a quick question, that's the informal mentoring.
Perfect. Next question has to do with transitioning between jobs and how to leverage your network during that time. The feeling is the market is pretty saturated right now with folks that are looking for new opportunities. And so how do you leverage your network in the right way to potentially help you during that period to transition into a new role? I'll offer it up to all three of you.
Yeah, I would say you can't find a job nowadays without a network. I literally would say that because AI is looking at all the resumes, and if you don't have certain things on the resumes, they don't even know who you are. They don't have any nuances with AI, right? It's just facts on facts. So, 90% of people are getting job because the person who's looking for that job knows some people, and so they're telling them you should look at this person, you should consider that. Here's the other thing I always do, and this goes with mentoring and or looking for a job, changing careers. When I was interviewing for a role, if I didn't see that it fit, I recommended 2 people from my network who I think might fit that role. Right? It's a win for me because now I have a relationship with the headhunter that, I'm valuable, I have a network, and I know what's right for me and I know what's not. So when they come up with a role that's right for me, they'll give it to me. And it's a win for my people in my network because they've been introduced to somebody they may have not met before. So this is
Mhm.
sort of an ongoing, fluid kind of thing that having a network really helps in a lot of ways.
Love it. Okay. Well, I thank you guys for the conversation today. I'll speak for myself and hopefully for the balance of the audience. I was incredibly inspired with all the things that you guys shared. I walked away with a couple of notes. Go back to the very beginning. We talked about the value of making sure that you're getting training for some of the things that you know will be critical as a part of being able to advance in a company, like something as simple as financial acumen and P&L management, and being offered opportunities potentially to be involved in meetings, to be exposed to some of those things, either asking for those meetings or offering those meetings to rising talent based on your role as a leader. I heard the opportunities to create an inclusive work environment built around flexibility and empathy. That was some of the terms that that Lauren had mentioned. And then also the highlight of being sure to create a strong network, whether that's during periods of transition or to be able to advocate for others within your network based on opportunities that you see, or creating opportunities potentially for allyship, or to potentially be a mentor for them, or be mentored by someone that you see in your network. So lots of really great insights that were shared. I appreciate all of your time today. I'd love to keep the conversation going. And so for those of you that that would like to stay, which Lisa says everybody, but you have an opportunity. We're going to break everybody up into even groups, and we're going to ask that you just introduce yourself in that group. It's a very informal conversation, but it gives you the opportunity just to continue the conversation, talk about the things that you heard today, and maybe start a new network. So if you want to stay on, I'm going to give it about 30 seconds just to see how we net out in terms of the count. And then we will divide everybody up into even groups. And then you guys can move on at 2 o'clock on to the rest of your day. So thank you, ladies. I appreciate your time today very much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Christine.
Absolutely.
Thank
All
you.
right. Not a problem. One should start moving out to rooms.